Hello and welcome back to Retro Ranger. This time, we're going to take a look at a collection of games published by the company Working Designs. With the company's unconventional start that focused on logging management software for IBMs in the late 80s, Working Designs would pivot hard to game publishing starting in 1990. Today, the games from Working Design are often sought after by physical game collectors like myself due to their quality packaging and presentation, and they tend to fetch some high premiums due to their smaller print runs. We won't cover every Working Designs game today, but we will look at a mixture across the various platforms that they publish to during their run. Are they worth their weight in gold, as their price tags would have you believe? Well, let's take a look. The first game we're going to check out is one of the most critically and commercially successful games that Working Designs played a role in, and that of course is Lunar, the Silver Star story. Let's take a look at the packaging first though, as it's a staple of Working Designs. This is the PS1 remake called Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete, and it came originally released as a collector's edition that really catches your eyes. It was wrapped by this beautiful cardboard box cover that has a nice embossing around the lettering and the characters on the cover and spine. It has a flip-out cover that contains the typical marketing material, but also in-game screenshots and some story preview as well. Its purpose was to house not only the multi-disc jewel case that the game came in, but also this gorgeous hardcover manual. Inside the jewel case were the 2 game discs, a soundtrack, a making of disc, and even a cloth map of the world. The manual is this impressive and massive, gorgeous example of how Working Designs really outdid themselves during their time publishing these wonderful localizations. I mean, just look at this thing. Alright though, enough of how it came. What about the game itself? Probably best to start where Lunar, the Silver Star, originally released in 1993 in Japan and was translated and localized to North America in the following year, of course by Working Designs. It was a smash hit in Japan and would cement its place in history, being the second highest selling Sega CD game of all time. From its success, it would go on to spawn not 1, not 2, but 3 remakes, the first of which is what we're going to cover, Lunar Silver Star Story Complete for the PlayStation 1, and it made landfall here in North America in May of 1999. I prefer this one the best of all versions as it stays close to the original, but it has some enhancements, though I will say that the PSP version is a cool restyling if that's your thing. The gameplay is rooted in the JRPG genre, and you're going to find many of its staples here. You take on control of Alex, a young but ambitious boy who comes from humble beginnings. Only his destiny isn't quite as humble, as he's the hero-in-wait Dragon Master, charged with being a guardian of the world. As the game progresses, as does the size of your party, you and your group overcome the challenges to stop, of course, an evil foe from world domination. It might sound generic, and it is, but what made this title really stand out was its high-quality animated cutscenes and the more impressive voice acting, something that was outside of the expectation of gamers for the time.
Hey there, kiddies! My name is Nash. I'm a level 3 apprentice from the famous magic city of Vane that floats around the Goddess Tower.
This game still holds up well, and it's just a fun game to lose yourself in. As I was capturing gameplay footage for this video, it was surprising to see how quickly the time went by. Prices for this one are unfortunately continuing to creep up, but one just to keep your eye out for nonetheless. Okay, moving right along, we come to a real heavy hitter for the Sega Saturn, Magic Knight Rayearth. Here's where working designs really raise the bar and part of why collectors love what they did. The Sega Saturn disc that came with the game has one of 3 main characters printed on them, in essence creating collectible variants where nerds like myself can debate about which disc is more rare than the others. Here you see the Hikaru variant. The manual is impressive in its own right, the cover of which has vibrant colors and well done foiling that really catches your eyes. Of course, the inside is also in color and remains just as vibrant. The contents of the manual are no slouch either. Character listings, controls, story, you name it, including the telltale making of localization, or the translation notes as it's often titled as. Also included within the registration card flap is a collectible sticker sheet as an added bonus. You could just really tell they cared about the presentation with all of their releases. Let's jump to the game itself. This was the last officially released Sega Saturn game in North America, and it dropped in November of 1998. Combined with a smaller print run, this one commands some serious heavy dough these days, especially if you're looking for one complete in box, but such is life collecting for the Sega Saturn these days. The game is based on the manga and anime series of the same name and largely follows the same plot of their original story arc. You play as Hikaru, Umi, and Fu, 8th graders, pulled from their contemporary world of the then modern Tokyo and into another world of sword and sorcery. To make their return home, they must accept their fate as the Magic Knights and rescue Princess Emerald from the villain Zagat. Magic Knight Rayearth is an action RPG and leaves you to maneuver in and out of combat and breaks from some of the traditional turn-based combat flow. As you'd expect, you control the Magic Knights as they make their way on their quest, ultimately getting unique weapons for each. This plays a major role in combat as you can switch between each of the 3 of the party members at any time, leaving you to strategize which weapon and hence character is the most important for the occasion. Each weapon has its advantages and disadvantages, like its range, power, upgrades, etc. Hikaru wields a sword, Umi a foil, which is a type of fencing sword, and Fu shoots a bow. Another interesting mechanic is how characters progress, which is tied less from direct combat and more so towards story elements. Since I never watched the show or read any of the books, the overall theme holds really no sway over me, but I do find the story generally appealing. You make your way through the world while Zagat throws his minions after you via boss battles and attempting to divert you from your overall goal. As you beat these bosses, you typically get a fun cutscene where the failed minion is punished and the next baddie is up to bat.
Alcyon was never suited to the task at hand. Zagat, there's still a chance to stop them. Send me, and I'll show them how we play.
The controls are a bit of a struggle when combat gets hairy, often running into enemies accidentally or attacking in a slightly wrong direction is a bit too common. It's not to say this is a bad game by any stretch, but with its price tag, definitely consider emulation if this is a must-play for you. Okay, moving on to the PlayStation. Here is a different action RPG, Alundra. Let's take a first look at its presentation. Alundra comes in a multi-disc jewel case, despite there only being one disc inside it, and it's quickly apparent why. The manual is an amazing 56-page tome of delightful and colored information, including many in-game screenshots. It includes a listing for enemies, items, and weapons. It contains story elements, characters, tips and tricks, and so much more, notably the making of for the localization. While unfortunately not a hardcover like Lunar, it is embossed, which really puts the finishing touches on it. Also included is a colored but sadly paper map. It's a shame it's not cloth like Lunar, but it is double-sided and it's still a nice little something, as is common with working designs. Let's check out the game. With its origins rooted in Landstalker for the Sega Genesis, Alundra shares some of the same core team members who worked on both titles, which was immediately apparent to the Working Designs team upon first seeing it. The game was widely released outside of Japan in 1998, and thankfully the one in North America received the Working Designs treatment. The game itself tackles some dark topics that are seldom covered during this era, though by no means the first to do so either. A follow-up was later released, simply titled Alundra 2, that, despite the implication, has no tie to the original, and it was published instead by Activision and was received as a mediocre sequel unlike its predecessor. What could be the pretext straight out of the Ys series, you play as Alundra, who is shipwrecked on an island, and they could really use the assistance of an adventurer. Only this adventurer does their adventuring in dreams, which is handy because the islanders are facing some serious nightmares, some of which are proving fatal. Alundra is an action RPG, as I mentioned, that will have an emphasis on puzzles, exploration, and even platforming. The combat is typical of an action RPG, and the whole lot smacks a bit of Zelda. Where it differs from that series, though, is the ability to enter the islanders' dreams, where you'll get a unique level based on the individual. This is where it can get into some of that darker story elements, and in my opinion actually separates it from the sea of other RPGs. I enjoyed this one more than I expected to. I had heard that it was just overly difficult, and while I don't think that was the sole reason to deter me from checking this game out sooner, I actually didn't find it all that difficult. Unlike the controls in Magic Knight Rayearth, they felt tighter here, and if I got hit, it was my own fault. Like I mentioned, it has some of the topics dealing with depression, death, and even some other more mature themes. It actually feels refreshing from a game that was released during this generation. It's certainly not cheap, hovering around $150 at the time of this video, but it is something that you might want to splurge on if you find it, given that it is surprisingly good. Okay, and with that we're on to the final game, both for our list and for Working Designs. That is Growlanser Generations, and this was their last published title. They went out with a bang, as this one is packed to the gills with goodies. Again, you have an oversized box and cover. It's embossed and certainly eye-catching. Inside is a treasure trove of extras that includes a replica weapon ring on a chain, a deck of playing cards that is somewhat disappointing that there's no art on the front side, but whatever, a watch contained within a nice snap case, a soundtrack, and finally the case with the game itself. Only this case can't even close. I mean, look at this thing. The case isn't broken. It's pretty much the same across the board. And the reason why is because it's this gigantic manual that is preventing it from actually closing correctly. The manual meets the high standard for Working Designs and includes over 50 colored pages of story, character listings, maps, controls, and of course, the translation notes that actually shines light on the challenges that this particular project took on the team and foreshadows the company's future. When the company took on the project, they had an ambitious vision of releasing both Growlanser 2 and 3 separately with some serious improvements to both over the Japanese originals, including upgraded voiceover options, auto battle, and more. Unfortunately, due to a dispute with Sony, Working Designs was forced to release both of these titles together in a compilation, which required an increased and significant investment upfront and a lesser payoff. As a result, Growlanser Generations is that compilation of both Growlanser 2 and 3. Both installments in the series are tactical JRPGs. However, unlike the norm for the genre, there's no grid-based movement, and instead it uses the three-dimensional space well to remove some of the abstract game mechanics a bit. It still plays like a tactical RPG, and characters have the normal actions such as move, attack, using items, casting spells, etc. The overworld map uses branching paths, and talking with the townsfolk can unlock more destinations. The battle maps mix in dynamic aspects, whether story or environmental hazards or changes, really well. It's too often that tactical JRPGs put you on this static battle screen, and thankfully nothing feels static about this one. The story is good, and features diverging points in it which takes shape depending on character relationships that culminate in multiple possible endings. You play as Wien Cruz, who is special for his ability to use ring weapons, hence the chained ring add-on in the packaging, which lets the character conjure some unique weapon from it, the type of which is character dependent. Over the course of the game, you group with other ring wielders who share the same ability. The ring weapons can be adorned with different gems, providing some interesting means to add benefits in combat. Overall, I really enjoyed both Growlanser 2 and 3. Their stories aren't overly generic and they keep you interested in what's going to happen next from start to finish. The battle system, like in Arc the Lad series of the same generation, is a great shakeup to the tactical genre that I personally really enjoy. While the deluxe version I showed earlier is definitely pricey, Working Designs did release a non-deluxe version for the first time that's much more affordable. And if you're not really interested in all the extras, this might be the better option. Put this one on your radar as it's another great game to have in your collection. Okay, and there's a look at a few of the Working Designs games across the different platforms. Are they worth their prices? Well, that's hard to answer. They're definitely fun and certainly enjoyable, and let's just say that I'm glad I snatched some of these up when I did. Unfortunately, Working Designs ended up shutting down in late 2005 when their president cited issues collaborating with Sony to secure the rights to release games for the PS2. Thankfully, there's more games than what we've covered here today that were released before their eventual closure, and I hope you've enjoyed this overview. But let me know down in the comments below, and perhaps we can revisit the remaining titles. In the meantime, thank you for watching Retro Ranger.